Hello, this is Jed Brewer with Study Groups. It's really nice to have you on our webinar this afternoon. Excited to be talking about technology automation. We have these software updates that come all the time, and they can be patches or major updates, and it seems kind of simple on the surface, but things can go haywire pretty quickly and cause big issues to our customers and our businesses if we have to go down during one of these updates. And so really what we're going to be talking today is about how can we use automation to achieve successful technology deployments. And really pleased to have experts in the field at ROC Associates to help lead us through that. And what they'll tell us here today is the key is in testing automation. They'll describe a little bit about what testing automation is and then how we can use that effectively to make sure our sites are up and running with the various technology that we're deploying, and we can continue to serve our customers. So the participants on this webinar today, Josh Carr, who's the CEO and COO of ROC Associates. We'll also hear from Brighid McCoy, who's the Director of Professional Services there, and Tom Oberkfell, who's the Senior Solutions Consultant. A little bit about ROC just before we jump in, but they help fuel retailers make technology and operational improvements. They do that from mobile apps to merchandising to everything in between. They've worked with a number of study group members over time, and I feel like, just been able to listen to the needs, understand the needs of where our members are coming from, and then help guide them through successful deployments. They ensure that your business processes are optimized with the goal of ultimately helping you maximize your profits. And then when no technology is falling short, you have a break in your process, or you need to upgrade to a new system, they can also help on a consultancy standpoint, help you identify what the best either back office system is or point of sale system to best meet your needs too. So that's a high level about ROC Associates, but again, really privileged to be able to have them lead this call for us today on technology automation. So Josh Carr, let me turn the floor over to you and help lead us through about what is testing automation and how do we use it in order to best keep our companies running.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Jed. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. When Jed approached me, it was our lucky turn to do another webinar for the study group folks. I really wanted to try to think of a topic that was interesting and maybe something that maybe not everyone had already learned about, but also was something that was really appropriate and could really be put to use by a retailer, no matter whether you're small or large. This is something that really is very approachable and really, I think, can be very beneficial to all the study group members. So as Jed did a great job of introducing the topic, we really want to talk about testing automation and how that can really help to mitigate some of the problems that a lot of the retailers that we see have had. So today I'll be joined by Brighid and Tommy. They're two of my top consultants, and they've been dealing with this technology with their client engagement for the last couple years at least. So they really have super deep expertise in this arena, but I thought I would just kind of kick us off and get us thinking about kind of this topic and the areas where testing automation is really going to kind of come into play. So go ahead and go to the next slide for me, Brighid. All right, so I want you all to kind of open your minds and kind of think about some scenarios here. So what do you do when your point of sale vendor, whether it's NCR or Verifone or Gilbarco or what have you, what do you do when they announce, okay, look, you are on a super old version, you have to upgrade or else we will no longer be able to support you. So you've got to upgrade. So you went ahead and upgraded your lab system, but now what? You can do some basic testing, but you want to make sure that before you push this out to the field that there's no major defects, that everything is really good to go, because the last thing you want is bugs in the field. When a cashier is trying to ring somebody up, you don't want them to have a big error message on the screen. They need to be able to ring your customers up and move on to the next. All right, next little scenario. What do you do? Another example is there can be frequent or occasional updates in the credit payment space. So I know Visa Fleet 2.0 recently was released, and that's a card that you need, as retailers, need to be able to accept. So there are certain processes and kind of checks and balances that you need to go through to make sure that you fully tested not only that new card type, but make sure that whenever that code was introduced to accept that kind of card, that you haven't broken any of the other existing cards. So next one. What do you do when Microsoft pushes out a security patch and it's a necessary security patch for your back office software, and you need to make sure that you fully test that? Not the point of sale is important, but so is your back office software. And then the last kind of scenario to wrap your head around, another scenario that we've seen, you think you fully tested your back office software, you've pushed out the update, but now all of a sudden your help desk is getting inundated by hundreds of calls from managers saying that a screen that normally used to open up within seconds now is taking 5 minutes to open their price change screen. So how did you miss that kind of performance related issue in your testing? So these are just kind of some high level scenarios. Just kind of have those in mind as we go through these the rest of this presentation. Because we really
I'll tell you, Josh, as a customer, it can be really frustrating. You go to a website or whatever, you're expecting it to work as normal, and they're in the middle of some upgrade that's gone wrong, and now you can't log in and get whatever information you're looking for, or what. So I appreciate it from the customer's perspective too, of just how vital it is to test this stuff before rolling it out.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, we really think that traditionally these applications really needed to be tested and hammered on by as many many testing resources as a retailer might have. However, we think that testing automation really can go a long way to helping to speed that process along and give you the efficiencies that you need. And if you want to go ahead and go to the next bullet point there, Brighid. Thank you. It'll really help to give you that confidence that you've fully tested all of your software and technology as you've deployed those updates. So in today's webinar, we're going to go through a real world case study. So no more of the kind of just thinking outside the box like I've kind of started us off. We're going to go through an actual real world case study from one of our clients. We'll go through how that implementation was done and the testing experience of that. We'll also talk at a level of what are the benefits that you can achieve through implementing this yourself. And then we'll actually show a demonstration of what it actually looks like, because we can talk about kind of just from an esoteric perspective is all we want, but I think it really will help you to see what it looks like in practice. So we're going to actually show you what it looks like when these testing automation softwares are implemented and are actually doing the testing. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brighid, and she'll take you through our case study.
Great, thank you, Josh. So before we jump into the case study, we have to actually define, and we have a textbook definition of what automation testing is. It's the use of specialized or third-party tools that can be programmed to repeat tests on software automatically without the need for human intervention. And it can improve accuracy, efficiency, save time, run things repeatedly, and consistency. But automated testing is really using tools to do the grunt work of testing. It's the repeatable tasks that have to be done but take a lot amount of time and resources. But what it is not a replacement for your QA team. It frees your team to focus on the issues, analyze results, test more thoroughly for faster, better, higher quality deployment. So it's about using your resources smartly for better quality, a quicker turnaround times, and ultimately you are saving resources because you're not having your help desk inundated. So go ahead and jump into our case study. So the problem that we were engaged to resolve. One of our customers had very lengthy testing cycles. Every time their payment controller for all their credit cards was updated or there was a hot fix, it was a minimum of a 4-week test cycle to turn around and test all the methods of payment. And when we say all methods of payment, we are talking about manually, they did the majority of them, but with automation, we were able to do more, and I'll tell you more about that shortly. So in a typical year, there would be 5 hot fixes to address major defects that were found in production and 1 major release for new features from the software vendor. And these were driven from new requirements from payment processors, like Josh said, the Visa Fleet 2.0, MasterCard BIN 2, EMV, things like that. And manual testing over the years was inconsistent. The reason why they had so many hot fixes was because defects made it into production. Manual testing has a high potential for human error, and you also lose operational knowledge through employee attrition, rifts, promotions, things like that. And also with manual testing, it still could not uncover all the potential scenarios. So more defects made it into production. So our solution. So to address this challenge, we worked with the customer to select and implement an automated testing tool. The final result is a daily automated testing run with a focus on all methods of payments. We use automated testing tools, which is a test simulator. We use a fuel robot simulator and a credit card robot simulator. The solution runs overnight, so there's no human intervention needed. We scheduled it. So in the morning, a resource logs on and analyzes the results and knows within minutes of starting their day the status of the labs, the credit processor for the labs, payment systems, the network, everything else. And that information is available to the leadership team every morning. There's no more surprises. So the goal of introducing this whole test strategy was to reduce the manual testing efforts. With 5 hot fixes a year, minimum 4 weeks, that's 20 weeks a year they were testing the same thing over and over again. Enabling faster defect identification. If we can find an issue with the latest hotfix from Microsoft, the quicker the better before it makes it out to production. We're able to improve test coverage, and test coverage is really how much of a solution you can test at one time. So if we assume that manual covered 25%, it's probably safe to assume that the new automated solution covers 75%. And we, of course, enhance the accuracy and eliminate human error. And we optimize our resources. We have staff focus on daily test results and analysis and not swiping credit cards all day. So our implementation. So the first month we spent evaluating all the different testing automation vendors, and then we made a recommendation to our customer. The key considerations we had was support for a variety of automation techniques, including OCR, which is like reading of the receipts and reports electronically, coordinate-based, which is following where your mouse is and knowing where it is on a screen and clicking in that location, and also image-based. Image-based is capturing like an image on a pin pad and always looking for the debit on the debit button on the screen, no matter where it might move. And then the actual implementation. We installed each different package from all these different vendors. We tried some trial scripts to gauge the learning curve, price point. How was their support organization? How easy was it to use? And then we presented our final recommendation to the stakeholders. Once they accepted our recommendation, we began the process of documenting a strategy and a series of small, quick wins that would have value immediately. Even if it was just entering a Visa transaction 20 times in a row, that's a quick, immediate validation that this is the right tool. Quick wins. Then we integrated robotics for the card and fuel simulators, and then began the nightly runs of the credit regression testing. We give daily monitors of how the lab networks, payment processors, payment systems, how everything is performing. And we have worked with different automation testing tools in the past, and we ultimately recommended a tool that was brand new to us because that tool met our customers' needs the best. And it was able to cover automated testing for multiple store systems, the point of sale, the back office, their kitchen system, self-checkout, kiosks, things like that. One tool was able to meet all those needs. So the outcome. This increased testing efficiency. Automated tests reduce the time required for routine testing by 70%. This allows the QA teams to focus on more complex, value-driven tasks, and we also let them have a faster detection of issues so they can resolve them quicker. It's better to know at 7 a.m. if your lab network is down than when everyone gets in at 8:30. And due to the need for manual testing in the past, most defects were identified in production. Using this automated testing approach, we identified issues before the stores did. In new releases, we were able to do a full regression functionality without having human opinions come into play, like, oh, did it always work this way? And we also have traceable logs that show changes in functionality, so you know when something changed. So we run the same scenarios all the time, eliminating the human error, and we cover more scenarios. Previously, they only covered 73 scenarios, and automated testing covers 198. And we've identified 12 defects identified over 0 in the previous testing cycles with manual defects. So that's 12 issues that didn't make it to production that would have slipped by. Some of the additional cost savings. We estimate that within the first year, this retail group will save over 20% in testing costs because the reduction in manual testing efforts, faster release cycles, less burden on support resources, and no lost sales of the register ultimately, which is the whole goal of testing. And over the next 2 years, these savings are expected to increase to at least 35%. And we have enhanced test coverage. We simulate a broad range of scenarios, including failures, which you can't always count on manual testing to do, network outages, multi-user transactions, things like that, that were not feasible in manual testing with a resource. Now we can do them in a systematic approach. So some of the key players in the automation arena, there's Test Complete from SmartBear, Selenium, Parasoft, QTP or Quick Test Pro, Jenkins, Appium. These are just some of the 6 biggest ones. Each one has different strengths and weaknesses, and we can follow up if you have any questions.
And Brighid, on those third-party vendors who can help, implement some of this stuff, are some better for certain use cases than others? Like maybe, I want to do a POS system with credit cards. Parasoft is the go-to, but for something back office related, Test Complete is. Or what's the difference between them?
So these are all just software packages. They're not implementations. I just wanted to clarify that. And it really depends on what you are using and what your automation goal is. If you want everything automated, credits, fuel, ordering, mobile ordering, things like that, I've had a lot of experience with QTP, but I think that, Test Complete for some of the other solutions. Parasoft is very solid and good for larger implementations and things that don't change often. So yeah, there's a lot of different, it just really depends on what your strategy is.
And if I can interject something as well, I know that some of these packages have greater abilities when it comes to I guess more kind of technical coding level of automation. So if you've got folks in-house that know how to write scripts in JavaScript or other kind of more programming languages, they're more robust from that perspective. And then other packages are more have more of a nice user interface, so that someone that is less technical can program these just with the mouse essentially. So there's also that kind of factors into what is going to be a better fit for your particular needs.
Mm-hmm. And ROC, I assume, could learn the company and what their needs are and best advise which platforms to use.
That's exactly right. Yeah. The initial step of any of these projects would be to really document and spend time with the users to understand the needs, to really kind of understand what is the requirements, and then we would go out to the marketplace to help identify what's the best package that can do that.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. I'm curious, Brighid. You're talking through this use case or a case study that you've done. Where you've applied automated testing. What % of convenience store retailers do you feel are doing automated testing, such as what you described in this case study?
I would say a lot less than you think. I can tell you of some of the big players in the US, I think only 3 have an automation strategy in place. and they are using some level of automation. The smaller the retailer, the less likely they have traditionally been to adopt it.
And why do you feel that's the case that so few are using it? I would imagine small versus large, maybe smaller or more resource constrained. But what would you say for why so few do it?
Well, a lot of it depends on the point of sale system you're using. Some point of sale systems, traditionally, you cannot identify a graphic. If it's not web-based, it doesn't have a name that you're calling or referring to. So it depends on your point of sale. It also depends on the pin pads you use. You know, there's some point of sale vendors, you really have to almost break apart their point of sale from a coding perspective, break the POS shell that surrounds it so that you can get to a command prompt to even run it. There's a lot of different variables it's just knowledge and it's know-how. I think it's being evaluated on a regular, more often now, and I think that there's more benefit for the smaller retailers now than there has been in the past, because we're looking at remote labs, virtual environments, things that you don't physically need someone on site. And if they have the know-how, they can actually just remote in and do this for you. Whereas beforehand, it was someone on site having to sit in your lab and take up space, which wasn't needed before.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So some additional real-world use cases. And these are things that we have done with customers. So one was we did load testing for a QSR chain. For all of their exports, we had a script that generated every daily export for all locations, so we could monitor the quality and of the network, the database, and server performances. Interestingly enough, we were also able to use the same script to rerun in production all of the daily exports after there was a file server failure. We automated for a large C-store chain their point of sale entries to ensure that new Microsoft patches did not impact production before patches were sent to the field. A lot of some POS vendors require Microsoft components like .NET, and with automation, you can catch any issues before the patches are sent to every store. This implementation also used the same script to test firewall changes. So whenever there was a firewall change, we just ran the script to make sure it still functioned as expected. Customer self-serve kiosk testing to ensure that new menu changes function as expected before they were sent out to production. Issues are identified and caught before they're pushed out. If the flow changed, the script alerted. You know, you can set it up to email you, and it can even set it up to text you and send you a text message. So we were able to let the team know that there was a difference in the flow, but not in the order of the buttons. So it still passed, but hey, this is just a warning. You know, ordering a BLT and adding pepper jack instead of cheddar, pepper jack changed where it was on the screen, so that you can catch these and confirm that they are intentional changes before you break something in production. And then self-checkout, determine the utilities, the wrap and backend functionality, make sure that they stay intact with each update, and ensure no new anomalies were introduced. We're able to test the usernames and that passwords remain consistent throughout the releases, and ensure that the manager functionality did not change, so no retraining of field resources was required.
And so, Brighid, if you were a retailer, would you say like those are some of the use cases where you get the biggest bang for your buck, so to speak, by deploying this, or would there be other areas that you'd recommend, like the low-hanging fruit is?
So if we're looking at low-hanging fruit, each customer is going to be unique. It depends on your pain points. Your biggest pain point is that your loyalty card is not accruing points correctly. Well, then that's where we should focus our first automation and our first testing automation in a lab environment, is make sure that it's you know, what it says on your receipt is what it says in the back end for your loyalty points, and that you can use them appropriately. If your biggest issue is performance related for your price book, well, we can set some guidelines and parameters and run in a lab system simulating the real world the number of connections that you would have to your back office system or your price book to see how long it takes. And in the test environment, if it takes more than 2 seconds to open up a screen, well, that's a failure. So we need to be notified, and we need to understand why and what the root cause was. And this will pull in at that point in time your different parameters when it fails. It'll let you know your database was maxed out, you don't have enough memory on the server, you know, IIS crashed, something like that. But you can capture all of those with failures in using automation testing. So it just really depends on what your pain points are.
That makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
Some quick facts about testing automation. 1/4 of companies that invested in test automation agreed that their ROI was immediate. A further 24% reported an increase in ROI within the first 6 months, and 28% had positive ROI within a year. So the numbers speak for themselves. And this is, you know, without the advent of AI or artificial intelligence. According to Forbes, introducing AI into testing automation is poised for a 37.3% growth in usage from 2023 to 2030. Machine learning does have a great opportunity in testing, and the ROI that we referenced in the first bullet, it's recognized without the addition of AI. Once we add AI in, I think it can be even more quantifiable. We'll be able to randomize more transactions and simulate more real world and out there test cases on a repeatable basis. So some quick benefits. There are so many. So there are several slides on this. Number one is increased efficiency and speed. Automated tests run faster than manual tests. Parallel testing, you can test across multiple environments and configurations at the same time, whereas manual testing, you would have to have someone doing that. The scripts from our case study are now used in other labs, just to talk about the parallel testing. And this ensures that the environmental variables don't break it. You know, if your lab is called lab 123 and you put it in another lab and it's called 456, making sure that the software stays the same, doesn't behave differently, that your configurations, even the images you use to push out to your stores, to your retailers, all of that information stays consistent. Improved QA resource retention. Of course, automation reduces manual routine tasks and lets your QA team focus on analyzing and root cause analysis. But your QA resources still have their jobs. That's the important thing. They are able to focus on the analysis and follow up on issues and spend less time performing the same thing over and over again. And that can actually lead to QA burnout. And then cost efficiency. A study by Capgemini and Sogeti, 20% reduction in testing costs and a 15% increase in efficiency. Automation leads to 20% cost savings in the first year and up to 35% in subsequent years. That's that study we referenced in the other slide as well. More benefits, because they just keep coming. Eliminates human error. The same test each time, the same way each time. So you get consistent results, consistent testing. And then 88% of respondents who implemented testing automation reported fewer bugs in production due to automation. And then cost savings, again, reduced manual effort. It reduces the need for repetitive manual testing. You free up your resources for more complex tasks. Long-term ROI. There is an initial setup cost, but it is outweighed by the long-term savings. But also the cost savings that have not been quantified, because it does vary on a case-to-case basis. But you are reducing your support calls. You are reducing frustrated customers. You are encouraging brand loyalty by always being able to accept that loyalty card and have the correct amount of points accrue when you have a more thoroughly tested application. So some benefits of automated testing, comprehensive testing. You can test everything like we talked about. You can do the load testing, performance testing, regression testing, functional testing. You can test earlier and more often. Like our case study, we test every night. make sure nothing has changed. And then, you know, Capgemini did a study where they said that test automation can increase test coverage by up to 85%. And that's huge. Those are those 12 defects from our case study that did not make it into production because we were able to catch them with automated testing. And then if you're doing your own in-house development, this is continuous testing. It shortens development cycles, enables faster releases or faster feedback to your vendors. So a lot of vendors have gone to, you know, we have a once a quarter release cycle. Well, if it takes you 4 weeks to test something and there's a backlog of things for your QA team to work on, you want to be able to catch that immediately, give your vendor the feedback so that your issues are resolved in their next release if it's on a quarterly basis. If you have a huge delay between when they release something to when you implement it, you're going to have a longer time frame before you get that fix. And some considerations. There is a high setup cost, and you need time for learning. Depending on your tool selection, you can use it without specialized knowledge, and that's important. Non-techie people, either point and click and draw pretty pictures, or have someone who can write Python and JavaScripts. And there's also an in-between, depending on your strategy. Regular updates. Maintenance is critical. You need to have, as part of your strategy, a policy. Your team has to do more than just write it and run it. There will need to be tweaks, improvements, updates for new features and releases, and don't rely on it too much. While we're over here singing its praises, you still need your QA team testing ad hoc, you know, running their own scenarios, see what happens if we click here, doing things like that, some randomization. That's still critical and still needs to happen, but your QA team should now, with the introduction of testing automation, have time to do that.
And is that still needed because the automated testing doesn't cover every use case, so humans can find other ones?
Well, it's still needed because an automated test script is only going to do what you tell it to do. So if I were to tell it to always click the debit button, and if it's not there, fail it. But I can't teach it that, well, if I click debit, credit, I mean, I could teach it, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to. If I were to teach it to click on a screen and say debit, credit, cancel, and unplug it, well, that's something your tester would do. They would come up with these unique out of left field scenarios that may uncover a defect. But I mean, a machine's only as smart as the person programming it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and a lot of these things, customer feedback too, when they ran into an error, and then you got to go replicate it.
Well, and with automation, if you have an approach of, you know, this issue made it out to the field and we didn't catch it with either manual or automated testing, this is your opportunity to create a new automated script that tests that exact scenario, and you can run it through right before it's released, so you always know that, okay, this issue isn't happening again. And you can do that for defects, for common support issues, things like that people have reported. You can replicate that in your testing environment and just run these scripts repeatedly to make sure it's not reintroduced. And another consideration is you have to decide, you know, as part of your approach and your strategy, are you going to use image-based, coordinate-based, OCR testing? Are you going to use APIs? Are you going to use the user interface? You need to decide how you want to when you start evaluating the tools. So you'll know if you want to do all of them, then you need to find a tool that'll do all of these for you. And some best practices we have learned. Planning. When you choose to implement your testing strategy, you've got to have, you got to know what you're going to measure. So you've got to say not only ROI, but, you know, for the case study that we talked about, we decided on 80% pass rate was good. And we've seen some days where it was 0% of the scripts work, and highest pass rate has been 92. It's never been 100%, but 80% is still good. If production right now only has 60% of this functionality working and 80% is really good, or a measurable goal like 65% coverage with an 85% pass rate. You have to plan for maintenance to enhance your scripts and testing suites. Every testing cycle should include time for updating and maintaining scripts. Like for our case study, it does right now. Every time there's a hot fix, anything that's identified as being different from the last release, there is time to go back and write more scripts or update the existing scripts to cover that new functionality or changed functionality. Got to have that in place. Also, you need to plan for analysis. The goal of testing, this is what the whole point of testing. How many defects have we found? You know, what does this mean? How many were caught in production that could have been caught with a human tester versus an automated tool? How can you change, you know, automated testing or human testing to catch more? And this is what you can refocus your QA team on, freeing them up from swiping the same credit card for 4 weeks, you know, 5 times a year. For 20 weeks out of the year, they're swiping credit cards. Now they can look and say, oh, wow, look, this is working as I expect it to. So what's failing now? What's coming down the pike? Is Visa Fleet 2.0? Do I need to start planning for that? Can I take the time now to order those cards so that it's not a rush when we finally get the software package that, you know, supports it? Things like that, that gives your QA resources more time. But you've got to do the analysis, and you have to select the right tool. You've got to select a tool that meets your needs, your scale, and your budget. You know, you've got to, right now we use, in that case study referred to, we use a lot of the image-based. We have OCR. We've got some of the geeky coding behind the scenes. We have some Python and some JavaScript. So we chose a tool that supports all of that. Remember, there's no such thing as a perfect deployment. But the goal of this whole approach with encouraging testing automation is to allow your resources to worry about the what ifs while the testing tool handles, this is how I know it's supposed to work. And your tool should grow with you in your technology approach. Our case study, we did like I said, we did a combination of everything. We even did some coordinate-based testing, just to click in the same location, you know, regardless of what image was there. So there's a lot of tools out there that support most, if not all, of your approaches. And with that being said, I am going to turn it over to Tommy. Tommy, so this is Thomas Oberkfell. And you just tell me when you want me to go to the next slide and hit go.
Sure, just a moment. I'm Tom Oberkfell from ROC Associates. And so now that we understand what test automation is and why it's so crucial, I wanted to dive into a live demonstration of it in action. So I'll be showing an automated test that shows how the automation suite sells retail merchandise as well as performs a refund. So if you could just show, is there any way to show the demo screen without actually playing it first, Brighid? Or there we go. So for this demo, we're using SmartBear. It's what Brighid and Josh have been talking about. It's a combo of a great user interface for those who aren't as familiar with Java or Python. The learning curve is relatively low. It's attractive, and it outputs very easy to use reporting. Our framework for this test, is pretty simple. So it's been written directly within the tool, not a programming language like JavaScript or Python. And I just wanted to note on the left-hand side that this is our project suite. It's called RPAWS Automation. But within the project suite, then we have what's called an execution plan. And that's what Brighid's actually showing on the screen right now. The execution plan is all of your individual keyword tests. The keyword tests are what you're actually running underneath the execution plan individually, one after the other. So we have bakery chip discover, bakery chip MasterCard debit. These are actually going through points on the point of sale, the bakery, for example, and it is running a Discover card chip. Now this uses a credit robot, so you could just as easily always tender with cash. But we're using a credit robot in this scenario, so that's why those look like they do. So if we could run this sample test to purchase some retail merchandise, Brighid. Okay, so we run the focus item. And our script is going to switch to the point of sale. It'll automatically log in.
It's kind of fun. It's suspenseful.
I know. We, by the way, while this is going, I'll let you know, I told them to kind of like do this video a little bit slower. Like in real time, it actually runs very, very quickly. But I wanted people to be able to actually see what they're looking at. So we slowed it down for you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So we press that specific button, the half dozen donut, and we're going to tender using electronic payment since we're connected to a credit robot. And once the test is executed, after it logs out of the EOS,
Yeah, so that was a successful transaction. You may notice that the little message in the upper right is kind of saying what it's doing. So like you can program in little delays to wait half a second, so that the images can appear. And so now it's, looking for a certain piece of information to know that the test is done, right? Or the step is done.
It also has self-healing in place in the event that something unexpected were to occur. It seems like it might be frozen right now. It's taking particularly, oh, okay, there we go. So it's gonna log out, and then we will see the outputted result. There we go, one test executed and completed. And then additionally, you can see what it would look like if we had an entire execution plan called RPA's core scripts with failures, warnings, passes all broken out in an easy to interpret format. That's a pretty good pass rate. And you saw that.
Actually really helps to see it in action, at least for me, a non-IT guy, to conceptualize what's going on.
And I don't write in JavaScript or Python, but I'm familiar with it, so I can troubleshoot a little bit of what's already been written in here. But it was pretty easy for me to get going with this.
Mm-hmm. And as you said, this is just one potential third-party application that you can test on.
It is. We're using Smart Bear by Test Complete. So this is a refund of a half dozen donuts. And then again, and we went to the other functions menu in order to process this refund. And then now we will tender it with credit, refund it to the credit card. It's waiting for the payment on the PIN pad. And then we will lock the terminal.
And earlier in the presentation, we were talking about, image-based testing suites. So you'll notice on this example point of sale, they've got their coffees and their snack buttons there. And the testing software can actually be programmed so that if someone changes the placement of that hot dog button, for example, and moves it to the bottom left corner, it can dynamically know that the next time it runs, and it's essentially self-healing was the term Tommy used. It'll find that button even if you did move it. So that's another thing that's kind of neat.
Yes, and that depends on how you set it up, for example. So if you set something up as coordinate based and you always want it to go to X, Y in whatever, the lower left-hand corner, and it's not there anymore, then you're going to get a failure. If you're always looking for that button and you've saved the image within the image of that button within SmartBear, then it will always find it. What we've found is that some of the software that we work with plays a little friendlier with specific test automation tools over others. So it doesn't seem to like OCR in this with this application, and then it likes image-based recognition with this one. So we had a bit of a learning curve with that as well. So we're going to go to the conclusion. Brighid, if you could go to the next slide. How can your organization benefit from automated testing? So we really want to drive home whether you're a chain of 20 or 2,000 stores, you can benefit from test automation. Automation ensures that testing remains efficient and continuous, even in resource-constrained environments like those with minimal staff and budget. Automation enhances the overall user experience by catching defects early and ensuring high-quality releases without manual intervention. Automated testing helps avoid disruptions and ensures your software remains operational at all times. And then, like we used in this example, robotics, along with test automation, help with remote testing for things like fuel and pin pad payments. So just like Josh said at the beginning, when he wanted everyone to get thinking about those scenarios he presented, what are mission critical applications that you use day to day in your business? How can they be deployed more reliably, consistently, and thoroughly by using test automation? Those are our buzzwords for this: reliability, consistency, and thoroughness. And thank you all for your attention. We hope you have a clearer understanding of how automation streamlines the testing process.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for sharing all that information. Yeah, it's an area that I've been unfamiliar with, and so often we deploy these upgrades and we figure it out after, right? As problems start to come up. And, I like the way you're more strategic, like let's take our time, let's test it. Let's not just do a couple tests, but like let's thoroughly test it, which is what this testing automation is doing, and really improve the customer experience, minimize downtime, and all the other benefits that you talked about.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, too many times. I mean, yes, we've seen plenty of the just push it out to the field and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, that could be, sometimes that goes okay, but it's a roll of the dice. Yeah, a lot of times that can be very painful. So
actually, Josh, that's a great tagline. We should change the tagline to "Test in the lab, not in the field."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Josh, Brighid, Tommy, thank you so much for your time. For the audience, you can see their contact information there. We'll push these slides out, also a recording of this video if it's helpful to share with a colleague, or I know Josh and team would be happy to answer any additional questions that you have, talk about specifics of your situation too, you know, if ROC may be a benefit to some of the things that you're working on. So appreciate everybody's time and look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Hope you have a really great day. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.